Hello and welcome to Studio RC. My name is Max. I am an alcoholic and I'm sober today only by the grace of God and the fellowship of this program. I'm also a follower of Jesus. Well, we welcome you to this latest edition of Studio RC, an encouragement for your recovery as well as your faith. And we're kicking off a new series called Elements. And Elements is going to be a short series now, and it will be ongoing where we'll continue to add to it. But we're going to take a look at the various elements that make up Recovery Church and kind of more of a nuts and bolts approach, some tools, maybe answer some of your questions that you have. But we're going to try to hit a bunch of different topics. Today we're going to just do an overview, kind of take a look at the importance of all the elements working together. And then each different episode from here, we're going to take a look at various things. Like, what if you're coming from a church background and you don't really know what to expect from like a 12-step meeting or an AA or NA meeting? What does that look like? Or maybe you're coming from a recovery side, and what does a church service look like? And so some of those elements and where there's crossover, we'll take a little look at the tension between both that we frequently talk about in Recovery Church, trying to make it so that there's a balance between both recovery and faith. We're going to take a look at planning your topics for the week, for the month, the rhythm of that. Whether you do series, whether each week is a different topic, or how that could look, and try to assist you in getting ahead of the curve. And rather than the week before trying to figure out what the best topic is or how you should plan that topic, some of that comes with time and a little organization, but it will alleviate a lot of stress if you're able to kind of get ahead of the planning topics. How about worship and music? I'm not an expert on that, but there are various ways and creative ways to utilize worship and music, and the importance of worship and music. And one of the things that definitely sets us apart from a recovery meeting is that we have worship. And so what does that look like? And what if you don't have a band? What if you only have a player? What if you don't even have a single guitar player? What could that look like? And we'll talk through that. We'll talk through things like resources, websites, where are some good places to help assist you in themes and messages and things like that. We'll also take a look at how do we build our volunteer teams and what teams are essential. Some of that will depend on the team that you have and the context that you're in. God has already brought together a team specifically for your location and your team. And what will that look like? And how can you best harness that? And how do you recruit in areas that maybe you need help in? Also, we will talk about sort of the spirit of rotation. We're not going to go too far into the values. The values we've already looked at, but the values will definitely help support the Recovery Church values of sort of who we are and what we believe. Absolutely will support a lot of these nuts and bolts kind of thing. So we're calling the series Elements in the sense that we need each and every element that we have to work together to give us the best Recovery Church experience for those who are coming, and how we can bring about that faith and recovery in just such a powerful way. We know that Recovery Church is a powerful vehicle, and that bridge to both the 12-step fellowship and to church. And how can we utilize this in such a way that really brings about holistic recovery, as well as holistic faith? And so each episode will look at a different element, but each element is as important as the other. Now, these topics may not be the most fancy topics or the most go get 'em kind of rah kind of topics, but they may be exactly what you need as maybe you're thinking about launching a recovery church. Maybe you've just launched a recovery church, or maybe it just will assist you wherever you are in your ministry. That is the hope on the next several elements of these. And so we're going to again take a look, and a lot of these elements will remind us, again, why we're doing what we do at Recovery Church, and a lot of the how we do it. And the beauty is there's a wide berth on how we can accomplish the various elements of Recovery Church. And again, it's based on your context, based on your team. There's so many different factors, but there is some overlap. And the hope is that if someone comes to a Recovery Church service in Washington State or in Florida, there'll be recognizable elements. They won't be carbon copies. We're not trying to franchise. It's not all the French fries have to be exactly the same, but we want there to be recognition. In the same way, when we have a Recovery Church service, one of the things we try to do is, if someone's coming from 12-step meetings, that they come in and they see elements of recovery present. And it's like if there were no elements of recovery, they'd say, oh, this is just another church service. Now, in the same sense, if someone came from church, we want to have some church elements so that if someone came from church, they'd recognize those and say, oh, this is just another 12-step meeting. And so that's the beauty. We get to be a blend of both. And I really think it's the best of both worlds. And we're so fortunate. So we're glad you're on this ride with us. And so in this episode, I just want to talk about the harmony in recovery and how there is this interconnectedness between the elements of faith and recovery that are so important. They are absolutely complementary, and they work together in such a powerful way. It's funny, as somebody who has been in recovery for a little while, as well as been in ministry a little while, I find myself being an apologist for if I'm in recovery, I'm an apologist for the church and try to explain the goodness and the value of church to sometimes people who are struggling with that, or maybe haven't had a good experience, and trying to show them how incredible and beautiful the church is and can be. But then in church, sometimes I'm an apologist for the 12 steps, because there's sometimes questions about recovery and why do we need that, and some of the elements of recovery. And one of the things that I have found is that both complement each other so well. And the recovery elements, none of the elements and the basic format, especially as written in the big book, none of them go against any concepts within our faith. And so those are open discussions that we're able to see. And so today, again, we're going to look at elements. As we dive deep into the understanding that there is an importance to the various elements within what we do each week at Recovery Church, but knowing that all the different elements work together harmoniously to create this holistic calling and purpose and place of recovery and faith, where organically they work together powerfully to create a new life for people. And just as the human body needs all of its parts, and the Bible talks about it, in order to function optimally, a ministry requires, or a Recovery Church service requires the same, a complete and unified approach where all the elements work together, where the team, the worship team is working with the leadership team, which is working with the technology, and all of the elements are working together. The open time of sharing, and if you have additional elements, maybe a Bible study, or some other discipleship or sponsorship group, that how all the elements work together. And it's if I can use a musical, to keep with that harmony and recovery, just as different musical notes harmonize to create this beautiful melody, each element of Recovery Church contributes to the completeness of the ministry, the uniqueness of what we offer, forming this powerful symphony of recovery and faith. I think that's one of the things that separates Recovery Church maybe from other ministries or other recovery things is how we have some unique things that work together, and there's such a powerful combination. Now, it is fascinating to explore how all the different pieces play the vital role in the journey of faith and recovery, and how the elements all converge to fulfill a holistic mission. That 12 steps, one goal, as our tagline says. So the first thing I want to look at and again, this is just an overview, and we'll hammer down at some of the individual elements. Each will get its own episode, but today I just want to do a little overview. One of the things that's really important: worship and prayer. It's the heartbeat of healing and wholeness. Worship and prayer lay this foundation for any, not only faith-based ministry, but for recovery as well. Worship may not be something that recovery is positioned well to help you with, whereas church is very well to help. But there is absolutely an overlay when it comes to prayer. Both faith and recovery recognize the power and importance of prayer. Worship and prayer help sustain the spiritual life of individuals, especially on the road to recovery. Now, worship centers our focus on God. It provides this sacred space for vulnerability and connection with God, whereas prayer invites the divine presence into the recovery process. One of the things that I love the opportunity when I have worshiping with other addicts and alcoholics. There is such a robust nature when addicts and alcoholics worship. There's something about somebody who has been to the bottom and the thankfulness and the gratitude that comes out in their worship. And again, worship may be something that's new to someone who might be coming just from the recovery side. And so we get to model what worship is and what that could look like, and how we can connect to God through worship. Now, it's interesting. I've been to recovery churches that have full bands, and they, 5, 6, piece band, and they have multiple teams, and they rotate them in and out, and it's unbelievable, top notch. I've also been a part of recovery churches that haven't had any musicians, and sometimes we have to rely on YouTube videos or just songs off of Amazon Music, and we play it with the lyrics and everything in between. A solo guitarist who can lead worship, and I have found worship is such an important element of recovery church, because again, it's a unique thing that people in recovery might not have ever experienced. And if you come from church, it's probably something that's a little bit more common, and it's usually a part of any church service that you go to. So that's an element that I try to make sure is in every recovery church service that I participate in, or especially ones that I lead, that there's some element of worship and prayer. Excuse me. Because it really is a connection point. It's a great element that, again, helps people to connect with God. And it sometimes just needs to be modeled so that people can experience. Another important element that we bring at Recovery Church is both biblical and big book teachings. They nourish the soul. Biblical teachings and teachings from the big book or the step book, any of the recovery literature, Just as a healthy diet nourishes the body, biblical teachings and the recovery literature feeds the soul. The Word of God serves as a guide. One of the things that I have found is in talking about it, every topic that is in the recovery literature can be found in the Bible, and they can parallel one another. Now, that's not always true, because the Bible, on the other way, the Bible's much bigger and deals with a lot more issues than the recovery literature. So, like, you might be hard pressed to, if you wanted to do something on the Trinity, and finding something like that in the recovery literature. But in recovery literature, if we want to talk about fear, we want to talk about grace, we want to talk about surrender, all of those topics are always in the scripture. So I have found that oftentimes that I'll start with a recovery concept and build it from there, knowing that the Bible always has a lot to say on the concepts that are in the recovery literature. But this serves as a guide. And whether it's the big book, which I really feel the big book is a spiritual book. It's not the Bible. I'm not saying that. But there's a lot of spiritual integrity to the book. That whether it's the big book or the Bible, there is wisdom and direction. Now, the big book, the beauty of the recovery literature is it specifically talks to the addict or alcoholic, and it's able to relate in a way that maybe is very specific to the individual. And so they're maybe able to relate to it just a little bit better, because it often is telling their story. But both provide a roadmap to transformation. So this is an important element to have, those both the biblical teachings as well as the recovery literature teachings, and and again, how they complement one another. Another important element of recovery church is that community and fellowship. This might be one of the most important things for the people who attend recovery church, that there is strength in unity. Community and fellowship. It's back to the musical example. Like the instruments in an orchestra, individuals in recovery need each other to create this harmonious melody of support and encouragement. Community helps provide accountability, understanding, and maybe most important of all, this sense of belonging. It's in this shared experience that true healing often takes place. And, whether it's before your gathering, after your gathering, whether it's a meal, whether it's an extra trip or a Saturday activity, that community and fellowship really starts to fill in some of the gaps for the addict and alcoholic who, after they feel like they've given up their social life, their time of drinking and using, what will they do? What will fill it? And community and fellowship is an important element that really helps to do that. And Recovery Church provides a great opportunity to do that. This might be an opportunity to think of, how can I continue to develop community and fellowship at my Recovery Church? Are there ways? Now, I oversee the Recovery Church online campus, and so we're all over the country, and so we don't have the opportunity to be together. But one of the things that we determined to do is once a year, we try to hold a retreat where those who can, we all come to the same place so that we can see each other. That's one of the ways we continue to further our community. But maybe, in your community, how can you develop that? Do you have a bowling night? Do you have a axe throwing? I don't know. Do you go to one of those, the farmer's market? Do you put up a stand at the farmer's market on Thursday nights? All these things are different ways to both develop your own community while even engaging in the greater community at large. Another important element is testimonies and sharing. this inspiring hope. Personal testimonies and sharing add a powerful layer to Recovery Church. And they mirror both the recovery community as well as the church community. And again, with that musical sort of staying with that, they're like the solo performances that inspire and uplift the entire audience that is listening. Sharing personal stories of triumph, of struggle, of continuing to battle over addiction. They offer hope, and they serve as a tangible reminder that recovery is possible. That's why we share. We share to encourage people, hey, I got clean, I got sober, so can you. This is what it was like, this is what happened, this is what it's like now, and that could be the same, it could be a similar story for you. These become a beacon of light for someone who may be in darkness. Now, testimonies sometimes come in the form of a speaker, whether a lot of times on anniversary, if you have an anniversary week, a lot of recovery churches do that at the end of the month, where they celebrate different levels of achievement of sobriety time, and oftentimes they'll have a celebrant speak who is celebrating an anniversary of some sort, whether it's 90 days, a year, 3 years, 8 years, whatever. They'll share and they'll offer their testimony, and it really encourages hope. But we also have just sharing. Many groups have an open time of sharing. Some groups are so big that they don't really have the opportunity to do that, and some groups are a little bit more intimate, and they have the opportunity where sharing is the primary thing that happens at their gathering for Recovery Church. I love the element of having the opportunity to share. Now, I think that people in recovery have grown to appreciate that time and that element that of sharing their thoughts and their feelings and where they're at, and there's a power in that. Much like just sharing it sometimes takes the air out of what's like, what may be a paper tiger of a concern or fear. I was concerned about this upcoming thing this morning. Whew, okay. Not as big a deal as I thought, or, it's just helpful. Or we share something and someone said, I experienced something similar to that. And P.S., I stayed clean. I stayed sober through that event. So there's hope and that tangible reminder. And sharing allows us to, again, get a little bit, it breaks it down, and there's an intimacy. And that also helps bring, foster greater community and fellowship. Last element I want to talk about in this episode, at least, is leadership and guiding the journey. The role of leadership is essential in Recovery Church, and just as a conductor of the orchestra guides, the leadership provides direction and support. Some Recovery Church have pastoral leaders. They have, whether it's people from the church, some have ordained clergy and some do not. But there's always leadership involved, and we often talk about in Recovery Church a person of peace, somebody who is the leader of that moment, the leader of those gathering. And leadership addresses like the macro and the micro, the vision as well as the individual needs. The leadership can offer guidance, wisdom, and a compassionate ear to a newcomer. It can also provide vision for what the Hope Recovery Church can grow into. It's an essential element of navigating the complexities of addiction recovery, having that leader. Now, what's interesting in the recovery arena, there are no leaders per se. They're trusted servants and they're people who have roles. And we have many trusted servants in Recovery Church. And some recovery churches are led only by trusted servants. And then we have, on the church side, that there's a pastoral leadership, a pastoral counseling. And some recovery churches have that element as well, that formal element of a pastoral leader. And whether it's the servant leader or that trusted servant or that pastoral leadership, or ideally a combination of both, that leadership is an important element that helps guide, that helps foster community, that helps point the direction of the ship, helps foster that community and fellowship. Leadership is a key element. And Recovery Church, in all sincerity, without leadership, it will have a very difficult time to really thrive, because there are elements that need to be led and that need somebody. And this is an opportunity for some who maybe never have had leadership. Recovery Church gives the opportunity to people who have not led formally, or maybe not been put in that position to do some things maybe outside their comfort zone. But it's incredible to watch people grow and to be able to take on some of those responsibilities. And some of the most incredible faith journeys we've been able to witness as we've seen them take on a role and then a little bit more responsibility, and how that grows into leadership. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. So, as just a reminder, these things work together in perfect harmony. Each element is a unique instrument, but it contributing a distinct sound to this symphony of healing and recovery at Recovery Church. Our faith and recovery journey is this beautiful composition, and it's the combination of these elements that really make us Recovery Church. So I thank you for joining us today at Studio RC and kind of listening to a little bit of an overview of elements and seeing the harmony in recovery and how those things work together. And so I hope this episode has been encouraging to you and has inspired you to appreciate truly the interconnectedness of the elements of faith and recovery that are present at Recovery Church. So we thank you for coming to Studio RC. As always, we encourage you to like it, to share it, to subscribe, continue to just increase the opportunity of getting the word out. And this might be something you want to share with friends from other RC locations, and especially maybe some friends that you've met at some of our conferences. And so this is like, hey, maybe this would be encouraging to you. So we thank you for coming to Studio RC, and we'll be back with another episode following this one of Elements. We're going to have several elements in this series, and then we'll add. If you have a thought for an element episode, we'd love to hear it, and we'll try to tackle those that really seem to be questions that you are asking. And so we just thank you, and we remind you that Recovery Church, 12 steps, one goal. God bless, and we'll see you next time.